This
13 people.
conference will now be recorded.
I see only 13 people on board, but I appreciate everybody showing up that has. This is, an important effort project in the community, and so thanks for coming to our green bag lunch, which we had planned before the vote to talk about it. And our initial intention was to bring people together to talk about the alternatives for spending that money that the county had available. So we talked about this in July and started the process to set things up. Lo and behold, the vote got scheduled on it, and it is, I guess, a done deal completely. The legislature has spoken, even though it was contentious, almost evenly split in terms of the opinion, which seems to be the same situation across the community. The opinions about whether we have an aquarium or not, and whether there are other more important competing issues, is out there. But in a sense, at this point in time, it's sort of a moot question, because the vote has occurred and the legislature has spoken. So we decided to go forward with the green bag lunch because there are issues going forward that we hope to be able to have a little bit of leverage on, and that's the whole sustainability aspects of this $85 million project. And so that's what we hope to focus on today. What needs to be done when we're building this project to make it a sustainable project for the community, and what that means in terms of sustainability. We'll talk a little bit in a few minutes when I turn it over to Greening USA's president and Director of Communications, Diane Brandley, who will share with us her concepts of how Greening USA's 12 traits sort of give us some guidance of what sustainability will mean with this particular project. So we will hear from Diane about that, and then we hope to hear from the rest of you and to have a somewhat relaxed, casual conversation about what this project means, and what can go into it to make it sustainable. I know that many of us probably would love to talk about, still alternative ideas, and there probably are a number of them that will come up today. But we're going to try to keep the focus on the sustainability of this particular um, uh, building project. So I don't know, and by way of introduction, I think that's all I really need to say here. We do have in the audience Mary Kuhn, who is on the county legislature, who is one of the most outspoken opponents of the project, is here with us. Hopefully, she can share some of her insights about what she might think that needs to go into this project as we go forward. Um, Diana, by way of introduction, is that it? I suppose we could go around the room and have people identify themselves. There's only 15 of us so far, so that might be one thing that we'd like to do. So why don't I do that? And I will call on people as I see them on my monitor, and hopefully it won't be switching around too much. But I see on the top row, Barry Lentz is with us. Barry, just a couple seconds. Introduce yourself. You're muted.
Barry Lentz, I'm a member of GreeningUSA. I'm also a member of Moving People Transportation Coalition and the Mayor's I-81 Cooperative, and a variety of other grassroots groups that are involved in environmental justice and sustainability issues.
Thanks, Barry. When you do unmute your mic to speak, we would appreciate it if you would mute yourself when you're finished speaking, and then keep your microphone muted unless you are called on to speak. Peg Coleman.
Hi, I'm Peg Coleman. I'm a microbiologist. I run a consulting firm from my home office here in Groton, New York. And I also have an interest in environmental justice work in Syracuse as an alum of SUNY ESF.
Nice to meet you, Peg. Thanks for being here. I see Mary's here.
Mary Kuhn. Are you
Thanks.
talking about Mary Kuhn?
Yes.
Okay, hi. Mary Kuhn, Onondaga County Legislature for the 7th District, which is DeWitt, part of DeWitt and part of the north part of the city. Also a member of Moving People, the I-81 Cooperative, and I'm the board of League of Women Voters.
Thanks, Mary, for being here today. Peter King.
Good morning, or good afternoon, I should say. Peter King. I'm with a number of groups, Moving People Transportation Coalition, Urban Jobs Task Force, other groups in the community. I'm interested in this topic, been following it through the summer.
Thanks, Peter. Good to see you. Scott Kushner.
Hello, you hear me?
Hi, Scott.
Hey, hi, I'm Scott Kushner. I'm involved in a couple different groups relating to sustainability, one of which is GreeningUSA. I'm on the board, and also a CCAA, which is Climate Change Awareness and Action Group, also concerned primarily with climate change, but with sustainability. And I'm part of a library initiative also related to sustainability.
Thanks, Scott. I mentioned that Scott is a member of the GreeningUSA Board of Directors. Jeffrey, you're muted.
I'm rarely muted in real life. I'm Jeffrey Gorney. I'm a freelance writer. I'm on the board at NEDA. I'm passionate about city life and sustainability.
Great, thanks for being here. Dave Perkins.
Hi, it's Dave Perkins. I'm just a concerned citizen.
Great, we need concerned citizens. Thanks for being here. Carol Biesmeyer.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carol Biesmeyer with my camera off, sorry. I'm a member of GreeningUSA and also involved in the local Wild Ones chapter, Habitat Gardening in Central New York, and we advocate for native plants in the landscape. And our organization is concerned with sustainability and climate change issues, as am I. So this Aquarium Project has me upset, let's just say.
Thanks for being here, Carol. Good to hear from you. Michaela.
Good afternoon. My name is Michaela Rem. Just an ordinary citizen. I'm here just to listen and learn.
Thank you. There are no just ordinary citizens. They're all extraordinary. Dick.
Yeah, I'm Dick Kornbluth. I'm a member of GreeningUSA. I'm also on the coordinating committee for CNY Solidarity, and in that role, I represent Solidarity to the GreeningUSA board and to the Urban Jobs Task Force board. And I'm also on the Heat Smart Steering Committee, which is an organization sponsored by NYSERDA promoting electrification.
Great, thanks, Dick, for your help with this. Bob Haley, I skipped a couple people for some reason here, but I got to go back. So Bob Haley.
Yeah, thank you, Bob Haley. I'm an architect by training and career, a member of Greening USA, thanks to good camaraderie with Diane's leadership and David Ashley and John and everybody from the beginning. I'm desperately trying to move I shouldn't say desperately, but I work every day a little bit trying to get sustainability into all planning projects in terms of long-term benefit. And just as an aside, in some of the early planning back in 93 and actually around the early days of Destiny, we actually developed a concept for an aquarium for the Syracuse area, and it was the origin of an aquarium, but it was based on the lake recovery process. So we were suggesting that an appropriate aquarium or freshwater theme for Central New York would be to feature our problem, in other words, how to sustainably correct Onondaga Lake as a demonstration project, which has been fairly successful and quite successful in terms of some other countries, but it was never adopted as a theme for a sustainable concept aquarium that would be globally known. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Bob. Katrina?
Hi, my name is Katrina Searing. I work in the Open Academy at the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry, so we're a continuing education unit. I also have the pleasure of working with Diane Brandley on the New York State Green Building Conference Advisory Board. And so I am here as a citizen of the city of Syracuse and a mother of 3 small children, and I used to work at an aquarium in Niagara Falls. So just here and looking to hear perspectives and to connect with you all. So thank you very much.
Thanks for being here, Katrina. Bill Chadwick.
Let me get the mic on. I didn't realize you were going down the list. Can you hear me,
Yep,
Peter?
You're good.
Good, thank you, John. So retired from Carrier, been at it for way too many years, and so the retired years I'll have to catch up. But early on when Greening USA got going, I helped join in, and it was quite exciting, and I'm trying to get back at it and hopefully can attend more of these meetings. There are many people on the call I personally know, and good to see you people, so thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for being here. And we heard from Barry, Dick, and I see 2 people that are listed as callers. Caller 3. On the telephone, right? Caller 3 has the telephone. It looks like your mic is open.
I'm Ed Michaelenko. I'm with the Onondaga Environmental Institute, and I don't know if I'm caller 3 or not. I just tied on by my cell phone.
You're showing up as caller 3, and I appreciate you showing up for the meeting. We talked about reaching out to you and try to recruit you to be here, and I just didn't get to do that. But I am glad you are here today. And then we have somebody listed as caller 1, so somebody else apparently on the telephone, possibly. Still muted, going once, going twice. We can come back to you when you want to speak. We would appreciate knowing who's in the meeting. And Andy Pico has joined us. Andy, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, Andy Pico. I own Sustainable Office Solution, Office Furniture Company.
Good to hear from you, Andy. It's been a while.
Yes, it has. Thank you.
All right. Great. So, okay, I mentioned a little bit in terms of ground rules when I was speaking earlier. I perhaps should, say who I am in case people don't know me. My name is John Prespiora. I'm a professional engineer, although I haven't been registered for a number of years. I worked for the city of Syracuse as the city engineer and the commissioner of water for a number of years back in the 90s, and a founding board member of GreeningUSA, and you're often moderator for our Green Bag Lunch program, which mostly happens most months of the year, the second Friday. So thanks for being with us today. Ground rules in terms of speaking, please keep your microphone muted until you're recognized. I understand if that Diane is controlling the app, so if she sees any problems, she can mute you as well, I think. So we look forward to your cooperation. I'm going to ask Diane to kick us off today with some thoughts on sustainability as it relates to this project.
Thanks, John. So thanks to all of you for being here. I know in the past, our board member, Peter Arsenault, would say we really need to be guided by the 12 traits of sustainable communities in everything that we do in this organization. So that's what I was thinking back to and refreshing my memory of when the Aquarium Project became an issue in Onondaga County. I wanted to say that this is not something we created. This is something that we gathered as best practices from all over the country. Best practices that communities are using to help create a more sustainable future for their community. So again, not something that we created, but we were trying to put all of this great wisdom into one place and then advocate for communities to take a look at this and understand what a sustainable community means. And so I just came up with a question for each of our categories. Originally, as John said, before we knew that there was going to be a vote on the aquarium, our first question was, should the government prioritize the use of tax dollars for this project? And that has now become a moot point because the project is passed. And at this moment, what we really need to do is advocate for this project to be a success now that it's going to be built. And more importantly, it needs to be sustainable. And what does that mean? What does a sustainable project mean? Is it going to contribute to the local economic resilience of the community? And meaning economic resilience, meaning that what we do is we try to create an economy that is diverse in any community. So is this going to create, contribute to a diverse economy? But more importantly, will this be an economically resilient project? And will it be self-sustaining? The economics surrounding this project, there's a lot of questions there about how much it will cost to build. I come from the design and construction industry. John introduced himself, so I'm a LEED accredited professional, and I used to work for Ashley McGraw Architects with Bob Haley. Hi, Bob. And so I have a long history in watching construction projects become ever more expensive during construction. So to estimate how much it's going to cost to build today doesn't mean how much they're going to wind up having to spend at the end of the project. And then, of course, there's the economic resilience of operating it and, salaries and everything that goes into such it's going to be an energy intensive and water intensive project. So sustainable land use planning, is there a development plan? This can go back to the economic resilience idea that, is this a plan that's going to be a diverse plan for the space? And is it, what is the plan? I know that back in 2012, there was a plan to develop the Inner Harbor. I know Bob knows all about that for sure. And at that moment in time, they were talking about all sorts of great and diverse plans for that space, and it hasn't exactly happened yet. Transportation and mobility, how do we get people there? And I'm sure that's something near and dear to Barry Lentz's heart. water. See, I'm trying to prime the pump. And as we go through this, what I want you to do is think in terms of, well, what is it that I'm concerned about? And what is it that I want to contribute to this conversation? Because what we are going to do is to make a list of concerns that are expressed here and send the list to the county executive and perhaps even to the Post Standard to create citizen involvement and talk about what people are concerned about surrounding this project. So yes, how do we get people to the aquarium? What kind of transportation is going to be available for that? Water-related infrastructure? What are the impacts for supply and wastewater for a very water-intensive project? You know, for a lake that we have been struggling to clean up all this time. Green building, topic near and dear to my heart. Will this receive a green building certification? Has anyone thought about that? The energy from non-fossil fuels. So we are trying to electrify everything, and we're trying to get our electricity from non-fossil fuel sources. And originally, I had seen a lot of people from National Grid sign up for this. So if we have any National Grid folk attending, please think about talking about that. Waste material management. How will construction and operational waste be handled? And the LEED rating system has a lot to say about that. Culture, arts, and entertainment. Does this project build on the history of Central New York and reflect its culture? And of course, it's sitting on Onondaga Lake, named for a native tribe that still lives right at the outskirts of the city of Syracuse. And will they be involved? Quality public education. I know that ESF has come out and talked about partnering with the aquarium. Will there be an outreach to K through 12 schools as well? Public health and safety. How do you ensure public health and safety inside and outside the building? It's an area of the city where safety is a concern. And community engagement. This is probably, you know, the number one thing that we talked about among ourselves in planning this was how little community input was asked for. And what we really need to do is advocate for community input going forward. So at this point, what we'd like to do is turn it over to you. And probably the best thing, would you like to, you know, since so many do not have their camera on, if you would like to speak, put your name in the chat. We could probably have a long, awkward silence here.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Diane. When I was talking about ground rules, I completely slipped my mind to tell all of you how it is we would like to bring you into the meeting. So as Diane said, either put your name in or write in there that you have a comment or a question, and we'll call on people as we see them in the chat. And I see that Mary Kuhn has beat everybody else to the punch on that. So Mary, how about let's hear from you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say these questions are exactly where we need to be right now. The lack of community engagement was purposeful, in my opinion, because I and many of the legislators got hundreds, over 400 emails, phone calls with many interesting suggestions and ideas, and raising some of the same questions that were raised here. And yet it was dismissed as some kind of a political noise or whatever. So I think that the ongoing pressure to raise these questions is critically important. One of the reasons I was so outspoken about this is not just the money, which you mentioned earlier, which putting this all on taxpayers from now into the future I think is unsustainable in itself. But the lack of any kind of plan, we have no idea about the design, how this is going to function, what the sustainability issues are, the environmental studies that need to happen prior to this are not included in the cost, nor is any remediation. And those are the areas where I think, as I was talking to Ed Michaelenko yesterday, and he could probably talk to this more. I think where the community can get involved right from the jump, because that is going to have to happen. I just want to do a little background here. One of the things that happened around this issue is that Ed talked about probably something along the lines of what Bob Haley mentioned, is for years people have been talking about a science research facility, which I did not know about, and many people did not, that could include some freshwater aquarium and an educational component that would include the Onondaga Nation. So I got Ed to present to our Democratic caucus, who got right behind this. We got the chair of the legislature to look at the PowerPoint that Ed presented. He liked it, and Ed tried to meet with the county executive. We thought maybe if an aquarium was so exciting, let's sort of begin to talk about how it can be related to our community first. That would also be a good tourist economic development project, rather than the opposite. And what has happened since Ed presented that, all of a sudden we are hearing about education, research, and science. That has never in any conversations we've had been part of the conversation. So blessedly it is now, but whether it's talking points or whether it's going to actually be operationalized, I think that the kinds of questions that you've posed today, Diane, are exactly right. So that is my concern. Many people have talked about continuing to protest, like you were talking, Mr. Presbyora. And I said, no, now the focus has to be on community engagement in this project. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. And that has been, my biggest question right now is, what's the process for the environmental reviews and the citizens' input into that process, and input into the bigger design issues and all that. So I'm glad you raised that point. I think that's the most significant issue right now in terms of our 12 traits rundown. Bob Haley has a question. Bob asked the question, to Mary, or when was this presented to the caucus?
Let's see, probably about a month ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago. And it was literally a week after Ed Michaelenko, I believe, and Ed, you could correct me on this, that a new PowerPoint was presented to the one of the legislative committees that started out with the idea of education, research, and science. And it was shortly after that that Joni Mahoney came out talking about a floating classroom, which has never, ever been part of the discussion prior to Ed presenting an alternative that would be sustainable, would be generic to our community, but also could very easily be a good tourist attraction, but begin with our own citizens.
No, thank you, Mary. That was exactly what we were proposing, again, in previous studies, now 30 years ago, which I can't even believe, but that's how time flies. We actually proposed an education center that used the lake and glass bottom boats. So Joni was around and really, involved in those years. So I think she's referring to some of those earlier studies. But I think at this point, I'm just going to jump to another quick subject and then get out of your way again in terms of discussion, is that it seems like at this early stage of the project, some verification for the project needs to be done before they take the deep dive into any large-scale construction, and that would be an energy analysis, a true energy and a sustainable energy analysis for the pro forma. The reason I say that is that maintaining the delicate species is going to require more precise environments for the species than we will have for our community's health. In other words, we will be maintaining, species of fish at precise water temperatures and clarities that are probably, and I don't know this, I don't know of any aquariums. I'm not knowledgeable in aquariums. I don't know of aquariums that are sustainable. There's got to be those that are on that leading frontage around the world, the leading path, in terms of energy, as well as how you use the local environment to leverage your best energy response. This aquarium should not be taken from other, famous world aquarium experts. It should be tuned specifically to this environment, this locale, which would be a lesson that we would teach in our teaching after people come to this. And I'll get out of the way.
Can I respond to that? Because I asked that in a committee meeting about why are we looking, they were looking throughout the country for informing what this aquarium would be rather than looking locally. And Ted Fox, who has been, and what's his name, from the planning committee, he was, you probably know him, Bob, from 30 years ago. He was involved in the first aquarium thought with David Botar.
Oh, yeah.
Both of them talk about the need to get national accreditation or whatever it's called for an aquarium. Therefore, you would have to be looking at a broad range of things. I also asked about why we're having salt water when we are inland. And I'm told by many of the people on the group that is planning this, that that's what people like to look at. So it's, again, it's focused on not on us, but it's focused on drawing in. They actually talked at one point about possibly even needing to expand our airport because people will be flying in to see this. So there's a truly exaggerated focus on tourism rather than our local, whether it's energy or any of those things. I asked about water issues. How do you plan to deal with salt water? Are we going to have a desalinization plant now? And they said that aquariums of saltwater have their own mechanism to do that. And I asked about the energy efficiency for that, and nobody could answer that. So again, there is no plan in place other than some idea. And regarding the plan around that, the Democratic caucus, who has been universally against this until one vote was bought, we got a very flashy core presentation that replicated some of what we saw 12 years ago from core. And it is not a diverse thing. It's primarily food court, restaurants, entertainment facilities, and bars. So in answer to that question.
Yeah, thanks, Mary, for that input on it. I see that Bill Chadwick mentions that there needs to be a community charrette as part of this, asking will there be as Mary has said, nobody knows anything about what the plan is for citizen engagement, citizen input into this thing. And when we need to try to leverage that, one of the things that GreeningUSA intends to do after this forum is trying to organize your input and get that input to the county executive in terms of what our ideas are, what we see the needs are moving forward. So appreciate that comment or question. Ed Michelenko says that he can summarize some of the recent activities. Ed, do you want to try to do that?
Sure, thank you. But excuse me, as Bob has pointed out, the concept of a Onondaga Lake Science Center, combined visitor museum, has been around a long time, and it's gone through several iterations. And I'll try to be brief, but there were two very close points to this coming to reality. One was at the time Dan Maffei was in Congress, and then Anne Marie Burkle put the knife in it and it stopped. And then early on, or actually towards the end of the tenure, Neil Murphy was the president of the ESF. But my organization, the Onondaga Environmental Institute, has long advocated a combined research and education center, floating classroom, which would have a visitor museum / ticket sales component. But the idea was you'd put together memberships, corporate sponsorship, you'd be able to fund the involvement or the engagement of the city schools because there would be a subsidy there. And the Onondaga Lake story is unique, but it's still, the Onondaga Lake Management Plan has not been completely brought to fruition. And so one of the issues is, what do you do going forward? And so the research still is focused, or needs are focused in several areas. And one of them is deep water oxygen. There's still obviously mercury and sediment related issues if you restore oxygen to the deep waters. Cold water fish was the goal of the management plan, and tributary restoration is necessary to that, along with brook trout restoration, sturgeon. And so it's been our position that a large freshwater aquarium would be central to this combined big tent concept. So there would not be one institution in control of this Onondaga Lake Science Center. It would include, in fact, in the early legislation, it was proposed it would be Syracuse University, ESF, the Onondaga Environmental Institute, the Upstate Freshwater Institute. Steve Epler was involved at the time, along with other organizations. And so we're hoping that this whole concept of an aquarium brings back the discussion of these elements, and it would be more inclusive. I do have documents that I'd be willing to share on floating classroom component, because we've studied and gathered information on floating classrooms all over the world. There's 400 aquarium, most of them are saltwater aquarium. There's only a few freshwater aquarium, and the aquarium that's closest to us that we believe is something we point to as an example is the Leahy Center. It's called the Echo Facility in Vermont at Lake Champlain. It has a university component with the education and research, has floating classroom component, and I've saved it for last, but one of the major pieces of it is a Native American component. And so again, at Onondaga Lake being the birthplace of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the relationship to the Onondaga Nation, and the system in the lake is something that we strongly advocate for as well. And so I've been dancing around this issue with everyone from the state legislature to the county legislature. I've given presentations on this as well. And, you know, it's our general position. It should be a big tent and it should include everyone. My organization has been the corporate sponsor for the Partnership for Onondaga Creek. We're also the group that launched the Onondaga Earth Corps. And so we still work very closely with the Onondaga Nation. And so we're hoping there's room under the roof for everyone. And I attended a meeting this morning, and I'm still not quite clear as to how the county is going to handle all of the questions that you guys have legitimately raised. But it's our last opportunity because there's a lot of common elements between an aquarium and the research center, education facility, working with the school groups and others like Bob had mentioned.
Right, thanks, Ed. It sounds like a plan. I too was when I first started reading about this in the newspaper, I said, what about the science aspects of this and all of the research? It just was not apparent. So thanks for your efforts on trying to steer this in that direction. I think the community could get behind the plan as you lay it out. And so let's keep going here. I see, I was going to call on Bob. I see he's got his hand up. I was going to call on Bob to answer the question that that Peg Coleman asked in the chat. And what is a charrette? And I suppose because Bob is an architect, and architects use that term and use that technique all the time. So Bob, can you just explain that for the group? And then if you have a question, follow up with Ed or what you were planning to say, go for it.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to support Ed's previous comment, which I'll do after this, with some eye candy about his efforts in the past for an aquarium center. But a charrette, to go back to the issue, is a focused design, a group of people coming together to focus on identifying a design problem, something that you have a vision and you want diverse opinions. You don't want just the architects and the engineers or the politicians or whomever. You want the community to pull their ideas together, sort out the priorities, and then use the design talents of sketching and visualization and ideas and stories and any aspect to add to the problem. Then you solve the problem with a proposal. So in a very short time, a very focused work session, you have diversity and you have all points of view and you have some images of where to go. It's a process for selecting priorities. It's definitely a process for citizen engagement, really at the highest level when it's done well. That's what a charrette is. It comes from an old academic term where the students were given a problem in 5 or 6, or in our case, 9 hours to solve the entire problem. And you had to put your drawings on the cart, the charrette cart, that was then rolled through the studio by the professors at 11 o'clock at night. And then it was judged the next day. And you mostly failed. You only gave points to the top best ideas. So that's a good thing about a charrette. I had just realized that. The best ideas are the ones that should come to the top. But I wanted to go back to Ed's point. If Diane, if you could share the screen for me, I will. Ooh, I hope I can make this large. Is it?
You
What do
are
I
the
do?
presenter, so you need to click your screen
Gotcha.
share now.
Good, I will. Now, these are just some images that Ed's group promoted for the old barge. I need to get this down here, maybe if I can. Yeah, see, I'm starting to play with things and I shouldn't do that. I only wanted to show this image that's underneath the corner view and give you a few images of what, hopefully this will roll. This was the conversion of the barge building that's there down at the inlet. And it's some ideas about how it would become a demonstration center for the public around the themes of the Inner Harbor. And it included just some images. Oops, I'm just going to go through these really quick about what that would look like with people on the water. Here's an interior of it with exhibits in the space. And as you can see, it's Native American, the birthplace of democracy, and the water, cold water issues would be parts of the exhibits as you walk through the interior of that space. The space is blocked out on the right. Here would be, small subset exhibits or facilities for the administration of the facility. And essentially, these were schematic concepts, really a charrette with some modeling, some simple 3D modeling that shows you how this existing resource could be energized with the themes that Ed's just spoken to. And that's all I wanted to add. Thank you. By the way, this is pretty good. With your computer in hand, we can actually pull out projects from I don't even know how many years ago and put them up into the discussion. So thanks.
Thanks, Bob. And thanks for the defining a very good explanation of charrettes. I appreciate that. And speaking of charrettes, and with the possibility, risking taking our focus off the aquarium, I want to just ask Barry to talk just briefly, tell us what he's written in the chat about the community grid charrette. And maybe just before Barry does that, I think the community got used to having a lot of input through this I-81 project, and I think that same level of input, I think, has set the bar in terms of what we expect in terms of participating in major community decisions. I hope that you agree with me on that point. But Barry, you want to tell us what you put in the chat about the I-81?
Sure. Way back in ancient history, before COVID, the city was working with the Congress for New Urbanism to have them come in and work with folks in the community in a charrette kind of urban design process to develop ideas, a vision for Syracuse as we have the I-81 community grid process coming into reality now. And because of COVID, we weren't able to proceed with that, but the city is now in a position to go ahead with that particular process. And so the community grid neighborhood design studio that I mentioned in the chat is an opportunity to do that. It's going to be a sort of a week-long process in which anybody, it's totally open, so anybody can come and participate in the charrette process beginning on Tuesday through Friday. There'll be open sessions all of those days where people can come in and present their ideas, interact with the architects, the urban design folks, the professionals, to articulate their challenges, their concerns, their ideas about a vision for Syracuse with the community grid in place. And then there'll be an open house on Saturday. All this information is, in the link to the webpage the city has up to present the ideas that came forth this week. So just in light of this conversation, this would be a great opportunity to not just bring this issue of the aquarium into that process, but the 12 traits as well into the conversation about the vision for a sustainable Syracuse. So hopefully everybody here will come and participate in that sometime during the week. I just think it's a real great opportunity, and as John has mentioned, sort of the I-81 process has become a sort of paradigm case of how you do community engagement. Although there are those of us who feel that it could have been much better, but still, again, this is another step that we can take to put forward that kind of example of community engagement. And Bob, you might want to have some more things you want to add to that.
I don't think so. I think you've covered it well. I think the only thing I would add is that the DOT, even with its listening to the community, was still driving the bus, so to speak. So we still got big highways and less community. And this new design project is about building the community around the DOT roads. It is to now see how can we best grow from the new, transportation structure in Central New York.
Yeah, thanks, Bob, and thanks, Barry, for that interlude. I see Bill has made a comment about the Wild Center. Bill, do you want to expand on that for us, Bill Chadwick? Bill, if you're, let's see, you might be muted. I can't hear you.
I don't see his name up anymore.
Maybe
I think
Bill
he's jumped out.
has had to leave, although he's still seen.
Mary had her hand up. Mary had her hand up.
Yes.
Sure, go
wants
ahead,
to talk.
Mary. Go ahead, Mary.
I just wanted to make a comment regarding, and I'll use Bob's analogy of who's driving the bus. The county is driving the bus on this one. And I can tell you that there has been almost zero interest in community engagement, as you're all aware, with hundreds of people being involved. And I think at this point, I guess I wonder if we could move, or at some point before the end of this, develop some kind of a beginning strategy about how to push this. Because I was very outspoken, I was seen as just a political operative. And that's what they've used. Two different county legislators, Republicans, have said that, and McMahon has said that in press conferences. So a place like Greening USA or any other group, I think, to get a group push from individuals from various groups to push to get this, because I'm feeling discouraged, but I don't want to give up about having the kind of input we're talking about here to make this. I also don't want it to fail. It's a ton of money, not just now, but into the future. So in order to make this something that is reasonable, I think it's, I don't know what the strategy can be, but I wonder if we could, this is an opportunity here to kick around some strategies for how to get in, not so much in the driver's seat, but get the county out of being the only one that is driving this bus, and developers and core. Core is essential to what's going on here. And county executive, who 4 or 5 months ago did say Destiny had nothing to do with this, when we were saying that this is some kind of a plan to bring Destiny back, is now saying that Destiny has been very supportive and will be very involved. So that's of concern to me. So anyway, that's what I wanted to just say. If can we, do you think that's a viable thing to come up with some strategies moving forward, because he's got the money now. So
Right.
now
I think you're right, Mary. That we need to do that. We need to figure that out. You know, I will also throw it out there that to support your comment about how the county has treated everyone who wanted to try to have input. I tried to get county folks to participate in the panel to share their ideas for this project with us, and I was able to have some good cooperation with Ryan's executive assistant, Gina. She passed along my requests a couple of different times to apparently to the team, the leaders of this effort. And, you know, I mean, I wasn't planning to admit that here today to you, but just to show you, I think, about how thick this wall is, they didn't get back to me. You know, nobody from the team got back to me and said, yeah, we would be glad to participate and, you know, and show you our grand vision for this thing. I thought they would want to, you know, show it to everybody, but they never got back to me. And that's part of the reason why the panel kind of fell apart, aside from the fact that the vote occurred and we had to kind of switch gears. So yeah, I think it's important that we figure out how to put together a group to make this siege.
Yeah.
Barry has a question.
Yeah, just to follow up on Mary's question about strategy. Again, I think that the city had did not play a role in this conversation because it was county money and not city money. But given that it is on city property, and the design studio process, I think, will be a step that folks can take. And if we can get enough people to come and participate in that and make the aquarium issue, you know, an issue that gets considered in this process, that could be, again, a step towards helping the county to see the value of that kind of community engagement. But it's all contingent upon enough people becoming engaged to do that.
Right. Well, you know, I think we have the basis for it here. I know Dick is here with us. He's on the steering committee for the CNY Solidarity group. So I think they would be instrumental in this, and I think they were instrumental in the first phase of this with the legislature organizing community efforts to make our voices heard. So I think we will have to do that. It probably won't be easy. Peter King, did you want to talk a little bit about what you wrote in the chat? Are you still with us here?
Hello? Yes, sure. Just in that reading about we've all been to the regional market on Saturday mornings. It used to be every day, and it used to be, I think, the most successful farmers market in the state for a while. And from my understanding, from reading a book of news clippings at the public library downtown, this really was a community venture that drew together all kinds of people and businesses and farmers and interest in a project that would generate a lot of attention, and so that's why that was successful. But in contrast, the aquarium, from my understanding, no business or anyone has, besides the county, has to express recent interest in it, notwithstanding the vision described by Bob Ailey and by Ed Mikolenko with regard to an education center, which might be lower energy budget, might be lower financial budget, and easier and drawing a lot more participation. So that was just that comment. And beyond that, I mean, there's the water issue for me is just mind-boggling, that we may be headed into a major drought over the next 10 years. There's no telling. But out west right now, there's a mega drought they haven't seen in 1,200 years. You know, it's a once in 1,200 years event. Major droughts tend to come eastward. I think in the 1960s was the last major drought in Syracuse, came eastward from the west. And so we may be, as this summer, we saw our Lounge-term brown. I mean, we may want water education citywide, countywide of some type, but that's just my 2 cents, but for sustainability.
Can I make
water?
Can I make a comment?
Go ahead, Mary. Go ahead, Mary.
Just about a cautionary tale about CNY Solidarity, of which I am a member. But that's how the county has been so dismissive, because CNY has been, Solidarity has been very vocal. And that's how the county dismisses any agitation. They associate anybody then whose comments as coming from Solidarity, and that's where they're calling it a political campaign. So I think environmental groups, housing groups, water groups, and any kind of natural building, green building people, it's really important to have a variety of voices and not have Solidarity out front, I think. The businesses that I have been contacted, that we've all been contacted by repeatedly, have been hotels and restaurants, amplifying this whole point that the primary focus here is tourism, and it has now been associated with by Chairman Rowley, which is what I think that Ryan is pushing, is this chip plant is now going to be bringing millions, hundreds of thousands of people here, thousands of people, whatever, and they all want to see an aquarium. So there's going to be a big push about the kinds of development. As you know, he's also going to now be talking about a soccer and lacrosse thing that again will be for the people who are, talk about lack of diversity. This is for middle-class people, for people who have cars. And when you talk about transportation, there's very little when you talk about going over to that part of the town. So anyway, I just wanted to say Solidarity absolutely will be in this, but there should be a way in the top front of the line, people who are like GreeningUSA and any other of the environmental groups leading the charge, with Solidarity being a strong backup. My thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for that input. Very important. Let's see. There were a couple other comments put in the chat, and a little bit about the Wild Center. I don't know that we need to talk about that. But Ed, did you want to talk about any of the Wild Center aspects that might be germane to this project?
Yes, thank you. No, the Wild Center was just a, if you haven't been there, Tupper Lake up in close to Saranac, and it is a wonderful experience. They have outdoor trails, so nature hikes around the water, and then their visitor center, their museum has some tanks with otters and brook trout displays, but they also have a highly interactive computerized display room. And there are literally hundreds of different short videos that project on a globe. So it's 3-dimensional, and people can sit all around it, and you can select your subject area or your topic. And so again, it is one of the example facilities that we've talked about over the years when we talk about a visitor center / museum education research facility.
Okay, yeah, maybe a field trip for the group some point here in the near future. Bob, did you want to have the floor again?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to get back to Diane's good long list of 12 traits by adding, for your notes, Diane, this basic concept, and that would be the reuse of existing embedded energy is part of our future. In other words, to use all of the steel and all of the concrete that's in place, or to reuse it so that we don't have to burn up more energy to make more excessively intensively embedded products. And part of this goes to why wasn't the aquarium, or couldn't the aquarium still be considered as being placed within the Destiny complex itself. Now, what I mean by that is, here is Destiny with vacant spaces, and it's got all of the resources, but it's a failing mall. If we take it that way, it's certainly not, hopefully not going to be failing forever. But why isn't the aquarium and its program being considered for possibly being included in some of the space in Destiny, so that we don't have to throw away that steel, or we can better use that steel and not have the city and the county have to pick up the tax credits that have been given to it, but make it a paying entity through renovation. Now, it's not a simple, easy task at all. However, essentially, Destiny, like most malls, or for that matter, most large buildings that have been built in the past, are a matrix of steel grids that have a flexible space within a set of bones. And those are systems. And embedded energy of the steel's frame systems, and for that matter, the concrete, can all be saved as a sustainable policy to save money, as well as negative impact on the environment. So it would seem to me to be worth it. And these can be, like the charrette we mentioned earlier, a design problem of the best designers to see how to fit an aquarium's program into the steel matrix of Destiny in one of the large box stores, or in one of the most appropriate areas that would be appropriate for that. Now, there's a place where I would rather see both Destiny and CORE and the county work together to solve sustainable and economic problems and transportation problems. We don't need more cars going to both places. The cars are programmed for through the I-81 project is designed to serve Destiny, of course, as well as the central New York area. So that's just one thought, Diane, how to take sustainable alternatives to the Aquarium project before we just start going ahead with a new, construction project, reusing and rebuying all materials. One of the difficulties with the entire engineering and architectural industry and development industry is we have to keep building. We have to keep building and consuming, and that can't go on forever. And sustainable actions now will help us in the future. And here's a place we can demonstrate that in this project.
Can I tell you, I'm so glad that you mentioned embedded energy, because of course we've focused on that at the Green Building Conference repeatedly, and maybe people who are not in the design and construction industry understand what that means. But what we're talking about is energy that's embedded in materials in terms of the energy that was burned to make the materials. If you're making all new materials, you're burning up a huge amount of new energy. So we're talking about energy that's embedded in materials that we're just tossing out. I just wanted to jump in with thoughts of my own again, sorry. But the three-legged stool of sustainability, when we go back a couple of decades and we started talking about this, it was always social, environmental, and economic. And one of the things that we have not talked about is the dedication to the social, to making sure that for as much as possible, that these are local jobs, that these are local construction jobs, but more than just local jobs, in construction and the operation of the facility, but it's also local materials. Are we bringing materials from hundreds and thousands of miles away, or are we bringing, supporting New York State businesses with materials for this project? So those are some things that have not been mentioned yet. And John mentioned earlier on environmental impact report. I think Mary mentioned it as well. I would sure love to see an environmental impact report on this project, because it's going to have a huge impact. So just a couple of comments from me.
Well, I want to piggyback on that, Diane, because there will have to be a DEIS. And I think that's where this group, this particular group, can get very much involved in terms of comments and ways to sort of slow things down a little bit. And Ed had mentioned that when we spoke yesterday. So that is some area. We did ask about the jobs, local jobs, and we're told that probably they will not be local, which was very interesting because there had been a lot of support from construction unions, which I understand that. If we wanted to build a nuclear power plant in the middle of the city, they would be for it because it's jobs. However, that's one of the reasons that question was asked. And we were told that probably because of the unique nature of this gigantic 600,000 gallon aquarium would probably be needed to get more specialized people from elsewhere. And we talked about local jobs, whether it would be union jobs, since this is a county project. No, it would not be, because it's going to be run by a not-for-profit, who we don't know who that is, who will be hiring, and those jobs would probably be local. But according to that, but I did want to say about Bob's comment, I can't tell you the number of emails of the hundreds that we got that talked about exactly that we have a mall that is partly empty. Why not either build an aquarium in there? Although there were a lot of people talking about an indoor water park. You know, and if you want to talk about tourism, a 24/7 kind of, not 24/7, what I say, 12 months a year. But people did talk about the use of Destiny, of the empty mall, to utilize an existing space rather than building something different. They don't want to listen to any of that. But again, that's what I'm talking about, strategy. There has to be some kind of a huge push to, if there's any chance at all, and I'm not feeling hopeful about that, but to get the county to listen, other than, what's his name? I mentioned David Botar said to me when I asked after the third presentation, tell me what the objection is to bringing the community into this discussion. And this is a quote from him. I would not expect the average Joe Schmo to understand what we're doing. We have a plan and we know what we're doing.
Wow.
That's the foundation of what we're dealing with here.
And not surprising.
And
Sorry.
that on the floor, and nobody, I wasn't countered in that. So he didn't even speak up and say, no, I didn't, because he did say that. So that's what we are all dealing with. And I think the community needs to be heavily engaged, starting with a lot of the environmental groups.
I think historically, just to add to your comment, the Lakeland Park was a lake resort for Onondaga Lake into the late 1880s, with the famous slides you always see of the horse going down the slide in the water. So the Onondaga Lake Water Park would seem to be a huge draw for Destiny and would include the aquarium, have an appropriate educational local aquarium context.
All right. Thanks, Bob. Michaela Ream has a question.
Oh, I turned my camera on. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. So it kind of goes, my question is sort of what Mary just quoted. And I don't mean this in a derogatory way. I am just an ordinary citizen who stumbled upon this in a roundabout way. It seems like everyone on this call has been involved or been around these types of issues. I don't know if necessarily issue is the right word, for a very long time. So I would like to understand a little bit more, and in layman's terms, how is this going to affect me? How is this going to affect my everyday? Why should I be involved? Why should other citizens be concerned or be involved in a non-political way, right? Why should I be worried about, I mean, this is my money that you guys are, not you guys personally, but that they're spending. So, like, it was a nice explanation, but that means nothing to me, right? That, again, I'm just a citizen. How was this broadcast to the community? How can we get the young, the college students involved? How do we get that word out there that this is an important issue? Have it be, good or bad. How do we get other people involved outside of people that this is what you guys do?
That's a very good question, Michaela, that you raise, is how do we make this recognizable to the everyday Joe and Mary on the street who are worried about the price of gas and other things happening. I mean, I suppose, yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have the answer for you, or I'm the best person to try and try and address that, but it's certainly always the challenge, like, similarly like the challenge of climate change and climate change policy has been over the past 20 years or so. How do we convince people that it matters about the actions that our government is taking and what the ramifications are for everybody up and down the neighborhood? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Anybody else want to jump in to try to talk to this topic? Dick,
Yeah,
maybe.
can I jump in for a second, John?
Sure.
I think Michaela identified, and Michaela, you asked the best question. Thank you so much. That was the best question, is why should I care and how do we get more people involved? You actually answered your own question once when you said, I realize it's my tax dollars. So that would be everyone's number one concern, is how is my money being spent? And that's an excellent reason to be involved right there. There's probably a whole long list of other really good reasons. And I think the one problem that we have identified across the board is apathy, is that we just don't have enough citizens involved in their own community, in their own government, and stuff happens under the radar. And because there's so much apathy, people don't notice, people don't get involved in, and casting no aspersions. I understand everyone has a busy life and it's just so difficult for some people to even get by day to day. But if people have the ability to become involved in any, I used to run around New York State lecturing. And the one thing that I would say is just pick one thing. If you do that, if everyone just picks one thing to get involved in, just imagine how much better things would be. So that's my answer to your question, is number one, it's your tax dollars and you have a right to say something about how they're spent. And my other admonition would be just pick one thing to become involved in. And whether it's the Aquarium Project or any other community issue, I would just strongly advocate for you to get involved in something.
Can I just piggyback off of that real quick? So I was a single mom of 3 girls. I was worried about putting food on the table, keeping a roof over our heads, food in their bellies. There were days that I went without food so that my children could. So my last concern is a blip that may have been on the news. Onondaga County, the city of Syracuse, has a poverty issue. So to ask citizens to get involved, it's a hard thing for them to think about or want to get involved, because again, they're worrying about, am I going to have a job? Do I have health care? How am I going to pay for my light bill? How am I going to put gas in my car? What I don't see is we haven't taken advantage of all of the schools that are around. I think juniors and seniors in high school are really, really aware of environmental issues nowadays, much more so than when I graduated back in the late 80s. College students, we have lots of SUNY schools, and I work for SUNY. We have SUNY Oswego, we have SUNY OCC, we have TC3. We have so many SUNY schools. We have SU, we have Lemoyne. Why are we not engaging them and their students? Because again, that demographic very much cares about the environment and what is happening with our earth. I just think that way we need to somehow engage the youth more. No offense to all of us. I mean, I'm over 50. I care because I have time to care. I'm getting involved because I did the raising of my children and I now can get involved. I'm not worried about those things that I used to be worried about. So that's just my thought. Sorry.
Nothing to be sorry about. You are spot on. I want to make comment a couple of things. I think the money issue is something that needs to be more highlighted. And I'll give you a statistic that I have used. The cost in 2021 dollars, which will be higher for a family of 4 to go to this aquarium, will be $78. The average grocery for a family living on poverty, grocery bill for a week is $79. So are we going to make those kinds of comparisons? Are we going to go grocery shopping or are we going to go see the fish? I also want to point out that at the legislature, at the vote, there was a strong majority, not the total, a strong majority of individuals from the south side of the city, where that 25% child poverty rate, 25% of the county, 25% of Onondaga County is considered in poverty, but we have the highest child poverty rate in the city of similar sized cities. And a lot of those people came out to say, what are you doing? So it's not just the entrance fee. In order to maintain this, so if we use the money and the dollars, I agree with you, that will energize some people. So in order to maintain this, they're talking about the need for 500,000 people every year to go through the doors of said aquarium. That makes very little sense to me. That we're talking about 670 people of Onondaga County residents going in every day, and 670 tourists. These are numbers out of the feasibility study. So by putting these kinds of what appear to be unrealistic numbers, meaning that you're going to pay more if they're not doing this. Now, the county executive is talking about private companies have stepped up. If that were true, they would have been able to sell this better if private money was involved. So I don't know what that is. There's so much we don't know. But I also have to say that Ryan McMahon got every superintendent of every school district in the county to write every legislator support for this. So I agree with you about children. I think they'd be hard pressed to get into the classrooms, but I think having parents get involved, parents who understand issues around sustainability and a green economy, getting kids and college student, high school students, they're the ones with the energy. I agree with you. I don't know quite how to do. That's why I was talking about what's the strategy. We need a strong strategy to really break in to this small group of people that seem to be designing and moving forward with this. And again, the environmental issue, I think the DEIS may be a good entry point.
Such a complicated problem that Michaela, raises and Mary talks about here. It's, and we probably can devote, a whole hour talking about the politics of these types of endeavors and how they happen and how activists can have some impact on them. I'm not, we probably can't dwell on it anymore today, but it's like this project in a microcosm obviously is symbolic of a bigger issue that pervades our communities. And I suppose in one sense, it's maybe why, you know, Greening USA was created to promote the concept of sustainability, is trying to balance these things out. I suppose we've hopefully educated a bunch of people in the community about how these things need to be balanced to call ourselves a sustainable community. Whether we've been, you know, successful or not, you know, when we're all dead, they'll write the history of it and talk about that. But that's, I guess, what the point is of the organization, is to try to figure out how to convince people that we need to stand up and try to balance these things of, you know, what's good for our economy, what's good for equity, you know, and what's good for the environment. And hopefully, if we sort of sort through that process, we as community can make a good decision about what we do and what we don't do. And so, you know, maybe that would be a good, this will be a good way to sort of end our meeting today. We're almost out of our time. You know, anyways, we got a few minutes. If anybody has a last minute comment would like to make, I see Dick has got his hand up, so go for it, Dick.
So yeah, so Mary, I just want to respond to your comment about solidarity in the legislature. I don't think that the public sort of presence of solidarity in the press conference center was in any shape or form expected to affect the opinions of any of the county legislators. That would not be remotely realistic. And I agree with you that, you know, we could be dismissed as being political. I think the target of doing that was not the legislature; it was really the public. And the problem is that the issue of the aquarium is so sort of, you know, when 81 was being considered, and the effect of doing anything with that road would have absolutely a direct and profound effect on the lives of thousands and thousands of people. It was easy to mobilize communities because they could see their interests being directly related to 81. It's very hard to make that jump to the aquarium and see how that personally. So that was we always knew that was going to be a really tough sell. But, you know, if you don't try, you don't, you know, but that was really the point of all that. Are you kidding? Affect Republican legislators from CNY Solidarity? That would require an act of God.
Right.
I had no expectations of that to happen. And that just last comment, which really goes to Michaela, this is a challenge because the aquarium seems so sort of unconnected and unrelated to the lives that Michaela described, the people who are struggling to have a living. So the only thing we can do is really to try to at least create a shift in the mindset of the people who are designing it to incorporate some actually useful, beneficial changes in the design and structure. And I really like Bob Haley's concept of basically reusing materials if at all possible, to put it inside of Destiny. Not like I have a great love for that mall. I try to avoid it as much as I humanly can, and I only go in there under duress. But I think that's really, you know, I think we can't just let it lie and not do anything. So, and I completely agree about getting the actual front line of this effort has to come from environmental groups and from people who actually have a really profound interest in the environment and sustainability. And solidarity will help. Yes, Bob?
That's all I meant, Dick, is to not, they shouldn't be leading the charge. I know you were not, but they use that as an excuse. That's what I'm saying. That's what they're calling political noise. Disregard. Anyway.
Bob?
Yeah, thank you. I think Michaela's comments and everybody's comments here are really emphasizing that this really is political and educational. Politics and political energies move based on consensus, and Michaela's comments about her family and many families in the community, and showing that they're somehow not addressed with decisions like this are fundamental to political leadership. I was surprised with the defense by the county executive to the vote. He took it totally personal. He didn't speak to any broad-based community consensus or support when he defended the vote. It was all about people were against me. They were voting. It was, and in fact, the workings at the county legislature were old school as well, how to work over to get the votes. They did everything they could to get the county to first not inform the full legislature about the timing of the vote and then the actual sequence of the vote. And secondly, by working individual legislators into positions to vote for them, when in fact it was disserving those own legislators' position and the people they represent. So it is political. It will be political. And that goes back to Diane's key point about education. When you educate the people to the political issues, the politicians most likely have to follow. And I guess my last comment with all of that is Ed Mikolenko is on board here, and we can start advancing him for the county executive position of the future. There you
go. Maybe we are a 501c3 and non-political charitable educational foundation, so we have to keep things.
Those will scratch from the minutes. Next time.
In that vein. But I want to just, I think it's time for us to wrap it up for today. I want to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart for being here today, turning into like a failed panel discussion into probably one of the best green bag lunches that Greening USA has held. So I know Dick was helpful in terms of setting this up, trying to convince Mary that she should be a part of this. And Mary, thank you for taking your time, but everyone for taking their time today to come together and talk about this important issue. Greening USA will try to do our best job to follow up, but we will need all of your help, as we move forward on this issue. So keeping each other informed will be important, and trying to work together as we go forward. So thanks again. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the nice weather here in Syracuse.
As a voice of feeling crying out in the wilderness, I very much appreciate you doing this today. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. All right, Diane.